All right, yeah, just introducing myself. So been with CODESYS about 6 months, doing a lot of industrial automation controls before that, and use CODESYS a lot in the field. So a lot of this I'll talk about today is kind of coming from my experience in the field using CODESYS, and some of the feedback that I heard, firsthand from people I worked with, or maybe the end operators on the floor using HMIs and using PLCs. So hopefully a lot of this is relatable to you and what you see in your role every day using CODESYS. So I'm going to focus today about creating custom dialogues. Obviously CODESYS has the power to do visualization right on the controller, which is great. But a lot of people don't know that you can very easily create dialogues of your own to bring a better and more modern look and feel to your HMIs and your visualizations. So that's what I'm going to focus on today, and we'll do a real short demo. I'll put something together and just try to, illustrate how you could do this on your own and empower yourself to create these types of dialogues in your own applications. All right, so traditionally, HMI design, what I would see out in the field a lot of times were what I would call, traditional or maybe some outdated HMI design practices. And these are just a few of the things I would see. So screen layouts that are very two-dimensional with a very flat architecture. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times you'll see, one page of visualization on your screen where all the information you can get is just crammed onto that page. You fill it up the best you can, and then once it's full, you make another page and you fill that up, and then you make another page, and so on and so on, and you just kind of switch between the pages as needed to get all the information you need to the user. All right, that's all well and good, and sometimes if it just works, that's fine. But people are getting used to seeing information displayed a little more efficiently, a little more lightweight view. And that's not always the case when you kind of do this traditional design. Like I call that a very flat architecture, right? One page, scroll the next page, scroll the next page, and so on. There's a better way we can do that, and I'll show you that here in a couple minutes. Also, screen resolution. So on older industrial hardware, the number of pixels you were given kind of as your canvas, was very limited. Small resolutions, 800 by 480, very small screens, maybe only a 7-inch display. That presents challenges to the designer to get the information they want on the screen. You need to be selective about the functionality and the information you put on that page, right? So you got to decide what goes in and decide what gets thrown out. Some HMI softwares and visualization designs don't make it easy to reuse elements. If you're showing, maybe the same thing over and over with some small variations, you may have to design each element from scratch. You can't reuse stuff quickly, and that costs you time in the development, and then also, costs you memory and compile time to build these bigger applications. Overcrowded screens are difficult to read, making them less effective, and while fatiguing the end user. I think we're all probably subject to this to some degree, right? When you open up a page and there's just so much information on it, your eyes just kind of gloss over, and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to read all this stuff. I'm just looking for one thing. Help me find it. Right? That I think we're all expecting to see that lighter weight design, give focus to where I want you to see and show you that information, rather than just throwing everything at you and leaving it up to you to go find it, right? So we're going to try to avoid that. And then finally, I talked about this, screen layouts and older designs may lack kind of the modern functionality and organization you're used to when you're browsing a web page on a tablet or a smartphone. All right, so in my example, I'm going to try to show you how maybe you can pull some of that into your visualization design using Dialogs. All right, so what are we going to do? We're going to try to kind of modernize it a bit. We're going to bring in more of a three-dimensional visual architecture, right, with Dialogs. So I'm going to show you a screen, and then maybe I'll layer on one piece of information and then bring another one over the top. That allows me to use the dialogue to bring focus into the information that's relevant to you. And then I can hide away the messy details. They're the things maybe you don't care about. I can push those to the background and just bring to focus what you need. With that, you can overcome some of those hardware limits maybe that you have on your hardware. If you do have limited resolution, well, if you can start layering in a third dimension, so to speak, well, now you can kind of multiply, in a sense, the amount of pixels you can use to convey information. So that's a great feature. We can eliminate the overcrowded screens by opening certain dialogues as needed, closing others when they're not needed. And then obviously with CODESYS, we can reuse visualization objects to speed up development time and reduce application size, which is a great feature. And you'll see that in my example. And in the end, we want to create a more lightweight, modern design that's more readable, friendlier to the human eye. And then, branding and adding a little bit of fun and style to your visualizations is a great feature. Maybe you want to create a look and feel that will be recognized by the end user, or maybe implement a color scheme that your company adopts to convey certain information. So we're going to try to do all that. All right, so some benefits of Dialogs. And I'll show you these here in CODESYS. I'll get into the IDE and give you a real quick example. But what you'll see in our example is that we're going to create our own keyboards with our own preferred key layout and characters. It's a very common piece of feedback I would get is they would say, hey, the default keyboard isn't quite what we're looking for. Can we make a bigger one? Can we maybe lay it out like a physical, US English keyboard, or maybe it's another country and they have a different layout. How do I customize that? Well, you can make your own keyboard and your own dialogue in CODESYS to do that. Same goes with number pads. Maybe you want a different number pad with a different number radix or certain limits, upper or lower limits. You can do that. Maybe there's a dialogue you want for additional IEC 61131 data types like time, date, time of day. You can create those to make it easier to enter that type of information. Maybe you want bigger buttons and bigger text fields so it's more friendly to the eye or easier to navigate with a touchscreen, right? That's a benefit of customization. You can also use hotkeys. You can create visual touchscreen elements and then supplement it with hotkeys so that you can use it either way with a physical keyboard and mouse or with a touchscreen with your hand. And then finally, you can benefit from familiar icons, right? I think we're all used to seeing certain icons mean certain things. You can utilize those in your visualizations as well to build on that intuitive nature that we all have, from our everyday use of mobile devices. All right, so I'm going to switch over to CODESYS quick here and show you an example of how you would build a dialogue. So in this example, what I chose to do is, let's say I have a database of contacts, right? Like you have names and phone numbers and addresses of people, and each contact you want to collect some information. Well, if I have 100 contacts or something and I wanted to visualize that, traditionally you would, maybe with a very flat architecture, you would have to try to put each contact's information on the screen, and there's no way that's ever going to fit. You need some sort of way to take that flat architecture and bring some multidimensionality to it. So what I did here is I created a structure of my contact information. These are the elements of the structure and what I'm going to collect for each contact. You should be pretty familiar: name, date of birth, email, phone number, address, and so on. Okay. Now, in the interest of time, because I know we don't have a ton of time, I already made a visualization for that structure. Okay, so I went ahead and did this and created basically each element of that structure, and then we'll drop that into our dialog when we're ready to bring this to life. Okay, so you can see all the fields here, and then I can either click into each box and edit that value, or I can open another dialog inside of this to edit that specific data type. And I'll show you that when we run the example. All right, so real simply, to create a dialog, if you're really starting from scratch, you go to Add Object in CODESYS, Visualization, and then you would just, pick a name for this, My Dialog. Okay, and you're going to add it. And the first thing you want to make sure you do is after you add it, right click, go to Properties, and then you're going to select this as a dialog type. Okay, the default is visualization. You're going to make sure you select dialog and hit OK. Now, CODESYS will now recognize that visualization as a dialog so that you can open it up with a clicking on a different element. Okay, so real quickly, what does a dialog look like? Well, you can kind of design them however you want, but let's kind of use a familiar design where maybe we have a body for the dialog and then maybe a header at the top. So I'm just going to drop on a couple elements quick here. I know these proportions of these elements, so I'm going to type these in quickly just because I know what they're going to be. Let's say this is the body of the dialog. Maybe I want to set the colors. You'll notice CODESYS does give you, in the style editor, some dialog color values here. I open it up like this. There we go. Let's see, I gotta find it here. Dialog background. Okay, and that's using the style guide of CODESYS. If you're not familiar with that, maybe we could talk about that in one of our CODESYS trainings if you'd like to join us. But basically, it's a part of the palette, so you can switch visualization styles, and the dialog will change color with it. All right, so let's also put in maybe like a dialog header. Maybe we're gonna have a title at the top. Okay. What color is this gonna be? Let's make this dialog header. So let's call this the dialog header. So I'm gonna make that color, and then I'll set the body as well. So there we go. I got kind of a header where I'll put a title, and then a body where I'll put in the data you're going to show to the end user. Now, let's add in the information. So I'm going to drop in that pre-designed frame for my contact information, like so. And you'll notice that fits in there just right. I got that all pre-worked out. And then maybe up here, I want to give this a title, like I want to call this contact information. Okay, and then I'll need to go in here and tweak a few things, the color, so it's more readable. Like that. All right, so we got the header, we got a title, we got the data we're going to edit. And now the last thing I want to show you that's important is adding buttons to write or cancel, kind of, a write or throw out the changes that you made to a piece of data with the dialog. Okay, so we're going to make a couple buttons. I'm going to call this button like an OK, right? So I'm going to accept the change I made to the data. And then maybe I'll have a button that's a cancel, like, okay, I made a change, but I want to throw that out, right? I want to throw that change away and just go back to what it was before. So I'm going to do an OK button and a cancel button. And then what I have to do with these is when I select the button and on a click here in my input configuration, I'm going to tell it when I click that button, I want to close this dialog, right? I'm going to close the current dialog. And the result I'm going to tell it is an OK, right? And CODESYS is going to know that. and then write the value back when the dialog closes. I can also do the same thing here, and I can change the result to be a cancel operation. And when CODESYS does that, it will throw away the change you made to the data. Okay. Now, the last piece I need to enter is the data I'm editing. So I'm going to just enter a contact info variable here. Let's see, contact info. And that's the data that's going to be read into my dialog when I open it. I will then edit that data as I would like. And then if I hit OK, the changes I make get written back to that piece of data. And that's how that works. So that's just kind of a quick example. Here's the finished product. I kind of pre-arranged this one, and I'll run this and show you what it looks like here in real time. So I'm actually just going to run this in my visualization as a web visualization. Hope you guys can see this okay. Now, I want to show you as well how I'm going to layer this information, right? I want to keep my visualization lightweight and simple and clean. So I'm going to click down here, and that's going to open up my database, right? I kind of have a little link here. I want to open up this contact database. All right, well, now it says, okay, this is the database, but which record, which element of that database do you want to look at? Contact 1, contact 2, 3, and so on. Let's just take a look at contact 1. I click that. That opens my dialog that we just designed. Now it read in the information for contact 1. Now I could go in here and I could start entering information. I can click and type, right? Let's say I want to start entering some of these fields. Or maybe I have a touch screen and I don't have a keyboard. Well, then I could click this, and now it opens a virtual keyboard as a dialog. This is a keyboard I designed, right? The little more to what I'm used to, maybe here with the North America type application, with the layout of the keyboard and the characters. All right, so I could use this as a touchscreen and type things in that way. Same thing for date of birth. Okay, so for CODESYS, dates and times kind of have this format, this D pound, where you need to know the year, the month, the dates. Well, okay, that's fine if you know it, but wouldn't this be nicer if I could just have a visual dialog where I can just go in and select the date? Let's just pick a date of birth and enter it that way. All right, that's much easier, right? I don't need to know all these syntaxes within CODESYS, or at least for the end user, that's nice. And so on and so on. I could go in here and enter email. I could enter phone number. I could, with a number pad, I can enter my address with the keyboard. So you can see in this case, now we have 3 dialogues layered on top of each other. We opened the database, we opened a record within the database, and then we're editing one piece of a structure inside of that element, that record, right? So that 3-dimensional layering is very visible here. It keeps your screen, lighter, less cluttered, and it keeps the focus on the information that's relevant, right? When I click this, I'm just seeing that text and changing, and everything else is pushed to the back and kind of fades away. And when I'm done, it comes back, right? It's a great way to design visualizations. And I think people find it easier to kind of process the information. All right. So if you've never opened a dialog, I'll just show you this quick. Once you've created your dialog and you're ready to open it in your application, the way you do that is you decide which element, right? I have kind of an invisible input here. And when I click on it with a mouse click, I tell it I'm going to open a dialog. I then select the dialog I created. And then I may have to enter some inputs, tell it which record of the database it's going to edit, and then CODESYS will open that and read in that data. Okay. Lastly, I'll just show you this too. We talked about the OK and the cancel, right? Say I delete this and I say, oh shoot, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep what was in there. If I hit cancel, right? It doesn't save my change, it reverts back to what I had. You'll see the next time I open it, that data is still there. Okay, so use that type of control to your benefit. You can create some really great visualizations without kind of making it too busy and too burdensome on the eye. All right, in closing here, I know I'm a little bit over on time. If you want to learn more about this, please see our CODESYS training page. Here we list the link, the usstore.codesys.com events has a full list of our upcoming trainings. We actually do have one on visualization scheduled here in the next month, if that's of interest to you. Otherwise, we have the typical essentials and intensive training courses. I teach a lot of those, so if you'd like to hear more from me, I'd love to see you in one of those classes and teach you about more of these great benefits of CODESYS. Also, a lot of the dialogues you saw today, the keyboards and the number pads and the calendar that I used, right? That's just an example of what you can create yourself. That's a library that we generated internally to use in some of our applications. You could do the same yourself, right? Learn how to do this stuff, make dialogues, make keyboards, and really you can unlock a lot of great power in CODESYS. So yeah, with that is all I have on the topic.